There's a couple of things that you can play with when you're working with this two-component polyurethane from POR15, and today I'm going to review two of these things and show you the effect, in reality, how that affects your results. To give you an example, I'm going to show you two pieces that I've coated with polyurethane. If you're looking at this one, for example, this is a part from my Jeep. I'm reasonably happy with the results of this one, and it's after a couple of days it becomes a very, very hard, solid coating, very closely resembling what you would get if you would powder coat something, actually. But you can see there's some small spots here, and these are actually bubbles that have been formed in the coating after I applied it. And these bubbles, they come from the reaction of the two components after you mix them and you apply them. So, but as I said, this is a reasonably good result, but sometimes if you coat, you will have something that looks like this. And here you can see, if you're looking close down here, there are lots of bubbles formed. And this one I'm not satisfied with. So I've been investigating this, and I've looked at the POR15 website, and then I found that one way of changing the viscosity of your coating, because if you would have a lower viscosity of your coating, easier flowing system, then these bubbles could disappear, actually come out from the coatings while it's curing. So one way of getting a lower viscosity of your coating is to mix the two components and then add xylene as a solvent to decrease its viscosity. And I think the reason why they recommend this is because they are aware of that if the curing procedure or the reaction actually goes too fast, then you form these bubbles inside the coating. So I'm going to use it according to the recipe, and then I'm going to add different percentages of xylene to show you the results on the final results on coating one of these aluminum plates. So the first thing I'm doing now is to just mix up the system, I mean the part A, so that we have a completely uniform distribution of the black filler component inside this one. And I've been doing this now for about 2 minutes. So this one is now, part A is perfectly homogeneous. So I'm now going to put 15 milliliters in each one of these ones of part A, and then it will be 5 milliliters in each one of these ones of part B. That is the recommended recipe. But after that, I'm going to put this one. We put this one here as a reference. I will just use that one as is and paint it as is to show you the results of what happens if you just use it according to the instruction. And in this one, I will put 5 volume percent xylene. In this one, 10 volume percent, and in this one, 20 volume percent. And then I will coat them, apply them in exactly the same way as the reference coating. I will let them cure, harden, and sit overnight, and when they're finally cured, I'll come back here and I will show you the difference in appearance between the reference, the diluted one with 5%, 10%, and the 20%, so that you can easier determine yourself if you need to apply or dilute your system before you apply it on your final part. And I'm now adding the curing agent. So now I'm just going to mix these systems. So now all the systems are mixed, and now we're going to add 5 volume percent into that one, 10 to that one, and 20 to that one. Then we will check them again, see how they flow, and then we will paint them on the aluminum plate, and we will let them sit overnight. So this is the 5, and this is the 10, and here's the 20. Well, when you mix the 20%, you will find out that it takes a little bit of time for it to become even, but it becomes very, very low viscous. take the 10%. Here it actually behaves more like a traditional paint that you buy and you paint on your walls at home, but it doesn't feel like it's like too liquid to be applied and actually cling on to the surface that you're painting. We take the 5%, and on the 5% you actually have to go back to the reference to compare if there's any difference. And here's the reference, the one that we haven't added any xylene to at all. And it seems a little bit too viscous to flow out easily. Of course, if you're looking into this, I can't really show you that, but you can see that when you mix this one with the 5% xylene, you mix down bubbles, and you can also see that bubbles are bursting on the surface of the paint continuously. So if you let it stand for a while, all the bubbles will actually go out. Now we're talking about the bubbles that are formed by the mixing, but there are other bubbles that I talked about before was the bubbles formed due to the reaction. And if you take the reference, for example, then the bubbles, they from mixing, they actually, here they burst 1 per second, here they burst in 1/10 of a second regularly, and on these ones you mix in bubbles and they actually seem like they're going out so fast so that you don't even notice. I guess you can translate this into that if you have this one prepared, you have to let it sit for 3, 4, 5 minutes actually to get the mixing bubbles out, whereas this one is going to be done in 1 to 2 minutes. And these ones, well, they just go out directly. Anyway, I'm going to let them sit here now for 5 minutes, all of them, so I'm sure that these bubbles that I got from the mixing are gone, and then we're going to paint them onto here. I'm not going to do this very complicated, so the first thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to take this one as this, and I will just drop it onto the surface. I will just let that flow out. And as a second method of application, I will just use a regular painter's brush, and we will apply it like this. And now to the reference. As you can see, the one which is diluted 20% xylene is shiny black already at the application. Here we can see the one with 10%, and I think you probably see some of the bubbles there. Let me take the one with 5. Well, here you see all the bubbles. And then we go to the reference. 10% in some. 5, quite a lot. The reference. A lot as well. Now we're down here at the 10, and then we look at the 20% diluted, and now you can see that there's a little spot there which is not covered, but it's shiny black. And I will wait now and let this sit overnight, and then we'll come back and take a look at it again. Morning everyone. Now I'm back here in the lab, and I'm going to show you the results. These coatings are all set now, and I can assure you that nothing more will happen here. If you put it in an oven under heat, they might become a little bit harder with time, but they are completely cured enough to be able to determine which composition and how much silane you need to use to get the optimal or finest coat. You can already now see that there is a huge difference between the results. And we will start with the reference one. If we go into the first part that we made, that was the blob that's sitting right there in the corner. What you see is that when you use the reference mixing condition and you coat a thick piece or a thick coating onto your object, then you get these bubbles inside. And these bubbles are not from the mixing, they are from the reaction. Typically mixing bubbles, they're bigger and they're non-uniform. These ones are all the same size. And they're the same bubbles that I could find in my part from the Jeep. And then you see, when you make it a bit thinner, you can see it doesn't make an even coat. So if you add the 5% xylane, you see less of these small bubbles forming. And also the thinner coat is slightly improved, although it's relatively much the same as the reference. But it's clear that from the thicker coat that the reaction bubbles are diminished. Now we go into the 10 volume percent. We take the thicker blob, and here you can see that all these small ones have dramatically decreased in numbers. So I judge that the solvent, the xylene, makes a more low viscous system, which in turn lets these small bubbles release during the curing of your coats. And we can also see here that we get, if you compare to the 5, a nicer, more uniform coat. Now let's move over to the 20. Here's the 20 volume percent. We go from the thicker one here, and you see there's not even one bubble in there. Now this one is a bit thinner than the other blobs, because obviously when you have this low viscous system, then it floats out more, so it's a little bit thinner. But still, the coat is completely free from bubbles and all shiny black. So if I would recommend something to anyone who would use this, I would recommend that you dilute your, well, you can do the same test, but I would dilute my Pore 15 2-component polyurethane with 20, or at least 15 to 20 volume percent xylene, and that's what I'm going to do with all my coats in the future. Another good advice is to coat thinner layers, because if you coat thinner layers, then you have less of possible discontinuities in your coat. So rather than coating a thick layer with this one, the reference mixture, the 5 volume percent, I would coat my object with 2 or 3 layers of this low viscous one and get a bubble-free coating. You may also now wonder, is there any difference between the mechanical integrity of these coatings? Well, there shouldn't be, because all the solvent has evaporating during the reaction procedure. So you can see here it creates a little bit of scratches, but that we have on all of them. And this is what it looks like if I try to dig in a screwdriver into them. And if I put really hard pressure on it, well, it still may not be fully cured all through, so this would have maybe been improved if I had it kept it under heat for a while, but it's going to be the same for all of them, I suspect. Here's the one which is diluted with 10 volume percent, and it's the same there. And here's the 5, same there, and this is the reference. The reference actually released more easily, and that's because the mechanical integrity of the coat is compromised by all these small bubbles that we also can see in the cross section what I just digged out from there. Yeah, it's bubbles in here. And I can say here that diluting your system with 20 volume percent decreases the thickness of a coat from about 2 millimeter to 0.5 millimeter if you apply it with just a regular brush.
10 volume percent is about 1 millimeter. 5 volume percent is about 1.5 millimeter, while the reference is about 2 millimeter. Well, I hope this video helps you when using the 2-component polyurethane coating from 415. Thanks for listening.